I've spent years as a Navy SEAL, trained to end conflicts before they even begin. But when three fake HOA enforcers stormed onto my 93-year-old grandmother's ranch, barking orders about violations, I knew they'd picked the wrong target. Welcome to HOA Karen Chronicles. Comment what country you're watching from. They didn't start with force. First, they tried to bury us under irrelevant accusations. One waved his clipboard citing Section 4.2 livestock restrictions and Code 7B exterior structures. Another claimed her rocking chair counted as unapproved outdoor furniture. The third even argued that her cows violated community noise ordinances. But here's the truth. My grandmother's land isn't under their HOA jurisdiction. The law is clear. HOA covenants only bind properties within the recorded subdivision, Civil Code 152. Private land outside HOA filings is exempt from their authority, Property Law, Sparkage 821. Attempting to enforce HOA rules on non-member land is harassment and trespass under Penal Code Sparkage 602. I told them flat out, you have no standing here. Shears Des, this land was deeded in 1951 and no association covenant has ever touched it. You're trespassing, not enforcing. They didn't care. They came to intimidate and steal. The moment one of them reached for the gate latch, muscle memory kicked in. I stepped forward, feigning compliance, then snapped into action. My left hand clamped his wrist, twisting sharply until his clipboard dropped. A pivot of my hip and he was slammed chest first into the gravel, as arm pinned behind his back. He let out a scream that echoed across the fields. The second rushed me, sloppy and overconfident. I sidestepped, hooked his ankle, and drove my shoulder into his sternum. He hit the ground so hard the dust cloud rose like smoke. Before he could breathe, I planted a knee on his chest and pulled the radio from his belt, crushing it under my boot. The third froze, then tried to grab me from behind. Wrong move. I snapped my elbow backward into his ribs, spun, and delivered a precise palm strike under his chin. He staggered, dazed, before I shoved him into the wooden fence post, head first. The thud was final. I stood over them, calm as the silence that followed. All three groaned in the dirt, uniforms torn, pride shattered. I told them in a low voice, this isn't your neighborhood. This isn't your authority, and this sure as hell isn't your win. The dust was still settling on my grandmother's porch when one of the three men, hands cuffed and sweat dripping down his face, cracked under pressure. He blurted out that they hadn't come on their own. Their boss had ordered them to seize the land. He muttered about how the property was perfect for development, prime acreage for luxury condos and golf courses. I could almost hear dollar signs ringing in his tone. My grandmother, 93 years old but calm as though she were sipping iced tea on a Sunday afternoon, shook her head and said firmly, "You came for the wrong ranch. You're not getting it. Not now. Not ever." Her voice was sharper than a whip, and the man looked like a schoolboy caught red-handed. I had already called the sheriff before the brawl broke out, and when he pulled up, he wasn't too pleased. The sheriff watched the footage from my body cam, arms folded, face unreadable, until he finally said, "Well, looks like they picked the wrong Navy SEAL to mess with." The three goons were bundled into the back of his cruiser, whining about just doing their job, as if that excused attempted assault and trespass. Section 18.2461 of Virginia Code popped into my head, conspiracy to commit trespass, and I realized they had just walked themselves into deeper charges than they expected. Still, as they drove off, my instincts told me the storm wasn't over. These weren't independent actors. They were disposable pawns. I knew the so-called boss wouldn't let go that easily. The land had been in my family for 60 years, my grandmother having raised crops and cattle through droughts, floods, and even HOA threats long before this nonsense. There was no way I was letting her legacy fall into greedy hands. I sharpened my focus, replaying every move in my head, preparing for the next wave, because one thing was certain: when money and power are involved, the enemy never stops at one attempt. The so-called boss didn't stay in the shadows for long. A week later, a convoy of shiny black SUVs rolled up to the property line, engines growling like wolves in the dark. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, flanked by three thick-necked goons who looked like they'd been hired straight out of a discount action movie. He wasn't here to talk. His eyes burned with greed and arrogance, the kind thought money alone could bulldoze history. He stormed up to my grandmother's porch, demanding she sign over the ranch peacefully before things get ugly. My grandmother, rocking calmly in her chair with her Bible resting on her lap, barely raised an eyebrow. "Son," she said, tapping her cane, "I've outlived worse men than you." That alone rattled him. Then he tried to sweeten the poison. He insisted the ranch could be put to more useful purposes. Luxury condos, a golf course, a shopping district. "This land is wasted on cows and corn," he sneered. That was the last straw. I stepped forward. "You call feeding families a waste? You call preserving 60 years of blood, sweat, and history a waste? My grandmother built this ranch through droughts and floods. Your useful purposes are nothing but greed wrapped in concrete." His jaw tightened, pride bruised. "You don't understand business," I smirked. "And you don't understand respect. That's the difference between us." When his 3 men advanced, cracking their knuckles like a bad soundtrack, I rolled my shoulders. "3 against 1, I said with a grin. "That's cute." They charged, but training never leaves a Navy SEAL. First one went down with a joint lock and a slam to the dirt. Second thought he had speed. I swept his legs clean out, planting him flat. The third pulled a baton, but 2 strikes later he was groaning on the ground beside his friends. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up just in time to see me pinning their boss face down in the gravel. Charges stacked high: conspiracy, assault, impersonation, trespass. My grandmother's ranch remained untouchable. That night, I finally sat on the porch, beer in hand. Victory had never tasted so clean. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you've had similar HOA nightmares. Your story might be next on HOA Karen Chronicles.